Hi guys, in this video I'm going to do an edit of this photo. I think I took this earlier this year, maybe January or February, on top of a hill. I've edited this one a couple of times actually, but I want to have another go at it now. So the first thing I need to do is straighten this horizon. You can see it's a little bit wonky. Some of that might be due to the lens distortion, so we'll just have a go at straightening it first and then see what it looks like. Just using the crop tool and the straighten part of the crop tool. It's a bit better, but you can see it's still doesn't look quite right. So I think I'm going to use the lens correction tool on this one because it was shot at 16mm, so it's quite wide and there's going to be some issues there. I'm using the default profile correction for the 16-35 lens that I used, and that seems to have done quite a good job anyway. I could manually play around with the controls using these sliders, but I think once I go back into the crop tool and just adjust the straightening again, I think that's probably going to be okay. The horizon level is a bit hard to see on this photo because it was actually quite misty, so you can't really see it that clearly. That looks better anyway. So moving on, I am going to play around with the sky because the sky is quite blown out. And I'm going to use the graduated filter tool, change it from what it's on to exposure. Then I hold the shift key and drag down to make sure it stays straight, and just drag it down about halfway to start with, and then you can adjust the exposure up or down as much as you want. I usually drag it all the way down just to see the effect, like where the effect starts and ends on the filter, and then I put the filter where I want it to be, and then I'll adjust the exposure again after once I've got the filter where I want it. So I'll just bring the exposure down slightly just to get some detail in the sky, and you can just play around with the positioning of the filter to get it just right. Back there looks quite good, so now I can start playing around with the other sliders. I want this edit to be really quite dramatic and possibly a little bit over the top, so I'm going to probably max everything out, or near enough max everything out, just to make it really stand out and be a bit crazy. So I've done the clarity and the saturation. I'm going to have a play around with some colours in the sky. I very rarely do this, but the sky was quite orange anyway. I want to kind of exaggerate that a little bit. So I'll just try and find a good kind of orangey colour on this colour picker. I don't want it to be too fake looking, but I want it to be a bit over the top. Again, you can also, I could also use the white balance tools on this, but I think that's probably a bit too much. I think I'll probably leave that pretty much where it was, and just play around with the highlights to get a bit of a moody sky. And you can play around with the saturation, get that orangey colour just where you want it. I think that's probably okay. I might play around with that again in a bit. Now I'm going to play with the rest of the image, just bring the highlights down on the rest of the image a bit. Probably boost the black slightly to make it a bit more contrasty. I don't want the image too dark overall though. And my friend clarity, this will really make it jump out. 100% there, that's pretty good. Minus 100, it's all soft and horrible. I don't think we'll go to the max, but we'll go quite high, maybe sort of 60-ish%. So I'll put the vibrance up a little bit just to get a bit more colour into the sky and into the grass, and saturation up a little bit. I'm also going to play with the tone curve. I've mentioned this in the last video I did. You can adjust this, and if you get a nice shallow S in that line, you can usually get a really good result. So to play around with the sliders a bit and see what that gives you. Lowering that darks really makes that image quite dramatic. I quite like that. So you can lessen the shadows or make them even darker. I think they look quite good, a little bit darker on this image. And we'll just boost the highlights a little bit and you get that nice shallow S shape that I keep going on about. It always seems to work, that does, every picture, so that's a really good tip. I don't need to play around with any of that because we're not in black and white and I don't want to change the saturation of anything else. Just have another quick tweak of this exposure just so I can get it looking just right. Maybe a bit of contrast in there as well. I'm quite liking that so far actually. Notice there's a load of dust spots on here because it was shot at f9, so it's showing up the dust. So I'm going to use the clone tool and clone out all these dust spots. Should have cleaned my sensor really before doing this by the looks of it. There's quite a few dust spots on here. As always, when I do this, I zoom in at full 100% and then I just scroll through the image in sections. I'll do like the top half and I'll clean all the spots there, and then I will kind of go down a little bit and go back the other way to make sure that I cover the whole image. Quite often though, I'll only do that for the sky because very rarely will you see any dust spots in the bottom section of the image where you've got more going on. It's only because the sky is kind of so plain, if you like, that you can see all these dust spots. A couple more, just little ones there. That's not a dust spot, that's a hill in the distance, so I don't want to get rid of that lump there. And you can see there, below the horizon line, you're not going to really see any dust spots, so I'll probably just leave it there. So I'm quite happy with that actually as it stands. I think that looks a lot better than what it did, but this bench I want to stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to use the adjustment brush and then go to dodge, lighten. I'm just going to lighten this bench up a little bit. Just get my brush to the right size. Again, you can click the show selected mask and that will show you where you're painting, so you can make sure that you get all the areas that you want in there. Doesn't have to be perfect, just cover most of the bench. I'd probably spend a little bit more time on this if I wasn't doing it for a video. Just get these dark areas so I can bring the shadows out of them a little bit, just to make that bench pop out a little more. So we can see what it looks like there, and I can then boost the shadows up a little bit. Get rid of that again, just to get those darker areas in the bench to pop out, so they're not quite so dark. There we go, that's a lot better. I think I can see the bench now, and I quite like the grass and I like the sky, so I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to do the noise reduction. Doesn't need much. It was shot at ISO 400, so it's only doesn't really need any, but I'll just stick a little bit in there because I've done a lot of moving of the exposure, so that would have introduced a bit of noise. So I'll just stick a little bit of noise reduction on there, and then holding down the Alt key and the masking for the sharpening, you can see which areas are going to be sharpened. I only want the grass and the bench area to be sharpened, so I'm going to put that up quite high and then just put up a little bit of sharpening. I think that's it, guys. Then I'm quite happy with that image actually. I think that looks a lot better than the other edit I did. The grass is really nice and sharp. You can see all the frost. It's a very kind of gritty, moody image. It's not, I wouldn't say it's particularly nice, if that makes any sense. It's quite harsh, but I think it works quite well for this image. So there you are, guys. Hope that was helpful, and just another thing for you to play around with. Maybe go out of your comfort zone a little bit and edit your images a little bit differently, give them a bit of a grittier edge. To see what it looks like before, you can see all the stuff I did there. Quite a lot of work on that one. So it went from that pretty bland, pretty plain and boring, to that which is in your face, gritty and harsh. Cheers, guys. Thanks very much, and I'll see you all soon.